Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and a delight to be here. And we thank you again to the library and the League of Women Voters for inviting us and having this wonderful presentation. Just let me know when she comes on. We're going to have some questions and answers afterwards, as they mentioned, and we're counting on everybody to maintain the theme of, civil discourse and respect as we have a constructive discussion here after we ask Christy some questions. Oh, there she is. Hello and welcome. What an
Hi.
eye-opening documentary you've brought forth. The approach to communicating in the context of disparate points of view is so important. So Christy, thank you again for joining us here today. I'd like to pose a few questions to get the conversation started. First of all, I guess some speakers in the film say that the mainstream media, social media, and the so-called political class have been really pivotal in fueling the polarization by putting ideologically toxic people in the limelight rather than talking to regular people. So I'd like to ask you, as a journalist and filmmaker, and you've worked at ABC and at Fox News, so how much do you think the media and our politicians are to blame? And what is your perspective on how to change that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And thank you all so much for just coming out and spending your time engaging and thinking around these issues. You are all now part of the solution. And I just want to tell you, I really appreciate that. And because the reason why I made this film is because I really was concerned about the kind of world we were leaving for our kids. Um, if we couldn't figure out and convince each other that we could have these kinds of civil conversations. So, to your question, though, not dodging the question, I hate it when journalists or anyone does that. It's not an easy one, um, because while I do think that, as the movie points out, that the media and the politicians, um, they are incentivized to give us this kinds of toxicity because they can rapidly see kind of a reward mechanism for that. Outrage can raise money or turn out volunteers or get your base energized. Um, However, we're the incentives, right? We're the incentive structure that powers that. And I think that that makes it incumbent upon all of us to really use that power wisely and to really consider how we are engaging in the political arena. Are we doing it with civility? Are we are we doing it with curiosity about that fundamentally respects the opinions of the other? So sorry to go on for so long for my first question, but thanks.
Thank you very much. That's a great answer. Your documentary also models ways to bring regular people together to discuss controversial issues. So, how can we incorporate that into our community, our workplace, or even our schools?
Well, for kind of from an organizational place, if any of you are interested in the same way that the Scarsdale Public Library and the League of Women Voters did, anyone wanting to bring this film anywhere is welcome to do so, and we will help facilitate that and try to make that happen. But the ways that all of us can engage, I think, are myriad, right? Like we have um, the ability within our social circles, at our dining room tables, um, all the time to treat others with respect, curiosity, and real authentic honesty, right? About like why do they believe what they believe. Um, Monica Guzman has written a fabulous book called "I Never Thought About It That Way," and she's a journalist who was in a very left place in Spokane, in Seattle, rather, in Washington State. But she is a first generation immigrant, and her parents are in a very, very conservative, different place, and were supporting the other candidate in 2016. And she realized that she really, and the people around her really fundamentally didn't understand how another community could feel so differently about a political candidate. And so she actually took a bus of her friends to a community that voted kind of opposite of them in the election. And they came away saying, I never thought about it that way. And I think that's kind of that's the thing that I hope that all of us are doing in our lives in as many ways as possible. I'm involved in another initiative called RAF for America, where we're actually partnering people from the right and the left to go whitewater rafting with one another. And I know that's like kind of radical and might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I just think this idea of the more that we can think of ways, whether it's bowling or shopping or hiking or whitewater rafting, that we can like engage with each other, the more humanization I think we're going to find.
Great, good points. Thank you for sharing that. And so as we head into this year's upcoming elections in November, people will no doubt run into others who hold opposing viewpoints. So what immediate on-the-spot reactions or remedies would you recommend to promote discussion and avoid conflict?
Um, so I think it goes back to those basic tenets of engaging with someone, which is to seek to understand rather than seeking to be understood. I think to avoid if you're interested in actually having a productive conversation, going into the conversation with the assumption that you're not going to change someone else's mind, and that isn't really an appropriate goal of the conversation, is probably pretty important.
I see a lot of nodding heads in the audience. It seems like people agree. Let's try to practice that in our lives. So the film was completed before the Democrats changed course with the nomination of Harris and Walsh. So is there anything you would add or revise as a footnote to your film in this context?
No, I really didn't. I made it even before the nominees were decided on either side. Actually, it premiered last fall and at a film festival, and we've been in 16 film festivals since then, and kind of had screenings all over the place. I didn't make it with an eye towards either of the candidates, although Trump does appear in the guns section. But it's really more about the toxicity of the conversations and how we can realize that us regular Americans, we're the vast majority, and we're not total jerks towards one another, most of us, and we really can have these conversations. So that was really important, like that it is important for us regular citizens to feel courage stepping into civic spaces with civility. I think that there's a perception right now that if you stick your head up, you might get it chopped off. And I think that that's really detrimental to civil society functioning well. I think we need more regular Americans to feel confident in coming into civic spaces. So my piece of advice is to do what you all are showing you can do right now, which is like sit in a room together, watch something, have a conversation. I think that's pretty good.
Great. That's why we're here. Thank you for that. So since today's meeting is co-hosted by the League of Women Voters, I'd like to ask you, what role does voting have in overcoming polarization?
I think voting is a really important demonstration of our civic responsibility as citizens. But I really think it's just one part, and it's kind of the most private part. Jennifer Merkishvili, the blonde academic in the film, she actually told me in another conversation, she said, my children don't even know what my political, like who I'm voting for when I go into the voting, because she's so against the labeling that comes from the kind of the two parties both being kind of in there. So I wouldn't go that far with in my family or with my kids, but I think that that's I think that voting is important, but I think that the more that we can like engage as human beings, that's also really important.
Right. Okay, I think at this point, we should turn the floor over to the audience members for their questions. Again, just to remind you all for respectful exchange of ideas here. And please speak into one of the microphones that our League of Women Voters hosts will bring around so that Christy can hear your question. Who would like to start? Christy Kendall.
Hi. Thank you so much for your incredible.
Can you hear Christy?
Mhm.
Thank you. I happen to be professionally a psychiatrist,
Oh.
and I deal with people's defenses, emotional defenses, every single day. And one of the realities that what you're demonstrating is that people who are emotionally defensive also have an ideological thinking, either on the right or the left. I don't necessarily deal with the political orientation of my patients, but the reality that each individual has some rigidity in their thinking is based upon their emotional defenses. So
Yeah.
what you would address so effectively, or what your staff addresses so effectively, is getting people just to hear what the other, say the other side or other people are thinking. And it's remarkable how effective that is. So I thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And this won't surprise you, but the conversation techniques that we use in the film actually come out of marriage counseling. So you probably recognize that.
I want to contribute, it's not my creation, but the phrase frozen beliefs. And I have a feeling that the man who is a psychiatrist, that among your patients, there's a lot of frozen beliefs.
Mm. Mm.
Your perspective on that, Christy?
Oh, I mean, that's interesting. I haven't heard that phrase, but I want to think on it. I like that as something that we would caution against. I like that.
I can add to what you're saying that ideological thinking is one-sided thinking.
Mm.
And that really reflects the fact that how rigid a person can be, one-sided.
Yeah.
Hi, is this on? Hi, thank you so much for a fascinating film. It was really great to see the techniques for how to engage in a collaborative manner in that context. How do you get to the table? Because a lot of times I feel like people don't even start by getting to the table, and so it's hard to even have the conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, so if it's just set up, if it's not like if it's not something where you are like designing the conversation, if it's just two friends meeting up, then my suggestion would be to use one of the techniques and be like, if you're with a friend who strongly disagrees with you, to use the technique of, can I reflect back to you why I think you think what you think? We know we disagree about this, but let me tell you what I see in you. And then to tell them the things, the positive things, like if they're on another side of an issue, why they, as a person who you care about and are friends with, might be different. For them to hear that from you is inherently humanizing and validating. And then to give them the opportunity and say to them, are there things that I missed or that I didn't get right? Engaging with that kind of humility is really affirming for someone in order to engage in a constructive conversation. It's interesting. I showed the film at my bungalow colony, which is in northern Westchester. And so one of the women came up to me afterwards and said, you know, I haven't talked to her friend Penny. Her name was Fanny, and she said, I haven't talked to Penny about anything other than kitchen renovations and grandchildren since 2016. But after seeing your film, we're going to try to have a conversation tomorrow. and I think that's great. You know, these are two people who care about each other, who've been in community, who both care about politics a lot, but are really coming from different perspectives and had just been scared to have those conversations. And I think that then like engaging in that kind of respectful dialogue can feel really liberating. Oh, but I also wanted to say though, if it's not just a friend thing, if it's like a formal thing and you want more resources, if you go to undivideusmovie.com, we have 2 discussion guides that are on there that were developed by different people who've seen the movie and gotten excited about it. One is designed by an organization called Living Room Conversations. The other is designed by the Mercatus Center. Both, they just have slightly different approaches, but they're both great and both have been used. We've done screenings with like Braver Angels and there's lots of organizations in the space that kind of have tools to try to help facilitate these kinds of conversations.
I think we're maybe a little ahead of the curve in Scarsdale in the sense that we have a nonpartisan political system to get things done in government, which doesn't always without flaws, but at least it's avoids the duopoly of the Republican and Democratic Party.
Go Scarsdale, yay!
Is how do we get the political parties to start thinking this way? I mean, there's a thing called No Labels, which is a group I know of in Congress that's actually working towards having these conversations and having respectful exchanges of ideas. Unfortunately, many of the people in those that are part of that movement in Congress are also getting primaried because the major parties don't really like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. I didn't have any answers when I started screening the film. One idea that has come up that I think has a lot of legs is ranked choice voting for the primary system, because it disincentivizes the extremism that the current primary system incentivizes. But I think ultimately it comes down to dealing with the incentives, right? The incentives right now drive this kind of like move to the polls, toxicity, name calling, distinguishing yourself as like the most hardcore Democrat or hardcore Republican. And that feels like a recipe for disaster.
Just to follow up on that, one of the points made in the film was that polarization is essential in promoting our freedoms and our democracy. And they also made the points about how important it is to have good disagreements. So we shouldn't fear polarization. We shouldn't fear, opposing viewpoints. We need to cultivate them and have good disagreements. So
totally. Yes.
And Christy, I want to express my gratitude for your making this film at this point in time. I haven't seen anything like this, and the timing couldn't be better. So I appreciate it, and I'm sure we all do. My question to you is, in the film, I heard that 20% of the population is what the media focuses on, and that are those folks who are insightful, not insight, but incited to create violence, and the media catches them with cameras. They're funded, they're sometimes put in places so that the media can catch it. Now, if 80% of the population is not participating in that, how do we, as part of those 80%, get the attention
Mhm.
to the media as a journalist,
Yeah.
get that attention focused on us
Mm.
rather than the 20% who create this kind of division and violence and make us feel like our system is not working and it's broken and give us a sense of hopelessness?
Yeah, that is such a great question. And I'm going to warn you right now, my answer is going to feel like unsatisfying because I don't think it's a simple answer. I think it's each one of us doing what we can as part of the 80%. So, like, the thing that I knew how to do was to make a film where I could show actual regular Americans having really constructive conversations without killing each other. Um, and just to also to be frank though, if we had had in one of our focus groups a real fight happen or like disrespect happen, I would have included that here because it would have been it's important for me to have that integrity. Like the process needed to have integrity also. And I was confident that I didn't think we would get that, but I didn't know for sure actually entering the documentary process. But just that said, like I think that each of us has to do what we can. Whether it's not clicking on something that is clickbait, whether it is saying to someone who's being kind of targeted, hey, I don't agree with them, but they have a right to their opinion and they're a human being and like let's find out why they think what they're thinking. Maybe they have a story, maybe there's a personal experience, maybe, we are all complex human beings that are not just 0, 1 variables, right? So it's like we have to I think each of us just has to do what we can. And so I'm sorry. I know that's an unsatisfying answer.
Is the film available to the general public? She's asking. I think the QR code that we had up earlier can answer that, but
Um, so yes, I think if you go to the website, there is a link where it's streaming on PBS. That is a shortened version of the film. The festival version of the film right now is not publicly available, but it soon will be. We're rolling it out on a platform called Civil. It's on Pluto. It's on Virgin Atlantic flights. It's kind of in random places. If anyone there, I'm volunteering, like the organizers are welcome to give out my contact information. And I'm happy to field requests for any way we can get it. We've got a version for classrooms. A lot of high school teachers have been using it this fall. It's very sweet to see. One of them made like 12 different colors so that kids could raise their things about all these different colors and was using that in class. It's very it totally fills my heart. So I love seeing all of that. And I'm always asking them, can you send us your lesson plans? Let's put them all on the website. Because I just think all of us need to be part of the solution because we're the majority. Like we don't have to take all this. And I'm not willing to cede it because I love our country and I love my kids and I want the best for their future. And I think we can do this.
Yes, I'd like to also add my admiration for your cause and for the ideas that you've expressed here. One of the things which I see is the need to understand rather than to be understood. And I recognize that in myself frequently in discussions. So
Right.
if it makes you stop and think about that, the idea of mirroring to someone else, let me tell you why you are thinking this way, why I think thinking this way. That is a wonderful experience because it forces you to think why they might be doing that, and as opposed to saying, "Oh, they're just wrong." No, I mean, even if you still think it's wrong, at least you got understanding of why they are doing that, and then asking them, "Am I correct?" I think it's a wonderful idea, and it can be done on a one-to-one basis or in a group to some degree. but the one-to-one with friends, I think is a very good idea. And I thank you again.
Thank you.
Wanted to know if the movie would be available free as opposed to charging for it. What's the deal there?
Yeah, it's available free.
I wanted approximately how long it took you to make this film. It's a great film, and thank you.
Oh, thank you. So my background is I was a producer for ABC News 2020, and then was I ran a weekly show when John Stossel left 2020 and went to Fox. I went as his executive producer and ran his show, and then did a documentary unit at Fox Business and Fox News. So I give you that background to tell you we started principal photography in January of 2023. I had like done the research and kind of had the outline and like figured out the process that we wanted to use. But we started shooting in January, and then had it ready to start submitting to film festivals in August. And we premiered last November. So it was a very quick production schedule. The reason why I tell you about my news background is because I think that's part of why I could put it together so quickly. Because I think a lot of documentary content that is out there, it takes much longer to put them all together. And I'm very impatient, as anyone will tell you who works with me. And I'm just like, let's get this done. We have no time to waste. And I really wanted it to be out for a full year before the election cycle, because it takes a while for people to find it, you know, and then to schedule screenings and do all this stuff. And I was like, we need to be able to have these conversations now. And it's been really great because right now we have just been seeing an unbelievable demand for the film. Really, really great. Which is so heartwarming, right? Because that means more people want to be having these conversations and feeling inspired and feeling hopeful. And that's how we win, I think. Like
If I may, I was just wondering, what motivated you to make this film? Was it an incident that you saw, or the divisiveness that upset? What motivated you to do this? Because it's fabulous.
Oh, thanks. So it was definitely my kids. And my kids are Jewish. Our family's Jewish, and it's actually my family's Seder that's in the film. And I think that a lot of what's gone on, I mean, and when I was making the film, I didn't even know, obviously, about that October 7th was going to happen and all the things that have happened subsequent to that. But I think that just this idea that people being scared to have really hard conversations about the things that they care about the most was just really deeply painful to me. And so I started researching it, and that was the nugget that kind of started it. It wasn't like an incident per se, but more this feeling like things seem really, really bad to me, and I want to know what I can do about it. In terms of where our political system was or is.
Thank you, Christy. If I may ask you to share your email or contact information in case people have further questions or follow-up or
Sure.
that they would like.
Yep.
I believe screening at Undivide Us.
Yeah, or you can go to Chris, or you can email me at Christy@undivideusmovie.com. Christy, Kristi.
Christy at undivideusmovie.com.
Yep,
right?
that's right. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm getting the signal. It's time to wrap up. I know we could continue this discussion for a very long time. But I would just like to have you all as a takeaway to remember to engage with each other, keep your minds open, be a bit more tolerant, see each other's humanity, and embrace your differences. And is that okay?
Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you for being with us and for creating this game-changing movie, the documentary. Thank you.
I know.
Kri. STI. Christy. Her name is Christy Kendall, Kendall, if you want to look up her other. Christy at undivideusmovie.com.
So people are welcome
yeah, I've
to hang around. We do have refreshments. Please help yourselves. And
Yeah, I think they rotate their offerings on PBS, so it may come back. It may come back on. Kendall. Kendall. Yeah, you can go and see all the. No, I